Morning all, how are we? And welcome to Mental Health Warriors. I said there were going to be big changes. I have, hence why I'm back drinking tea again. And it's actually organic. But before I bring these powerful legends on, please share this in awareness because we are going to talk about this topic, and that is the connection between mental health and the education system. And already, I've read my partner's mind, which is dangerous, and she said, "Oh God, here we go." And there you go, she's grinning. But anyway, please share this, and we will see you in 30 seconds because we've got profile and communication specialist Alan Stevens and fellow warrior new to the team, Kane Novak. See you soon. Morning, lads. How are we?
Pretty good.
Amazing. How are you?
I'm very good. Real refreshed, I say. Refreshed. Yeah, I'm on my second organic green tea and jasmine tea.
Beautiful.
Can't go wrong there.
No, you can't.
How about you, Alan? Are you winding down for the day?
Pretty much so. It's 10 o'clock here, and I think it's probably 9 p.m. for you where you are as well.
Yes, that's right.
So we're pretty much through the day.
Exactly. Well, I guarantee, because it's 10 p.m. Alan's time, he always gets me back when it comes to his shows. So he will get me back at some point. I just don't know when. As they said, prepare for the unexpected. Yeah. And especially when I've signed up to a panel show on the campfire. Yeah. Anyway, education. So, Kane, originally you brought up this topic and you were supposed to be on with my partner, Kerry. But because obviously I was busy, but obviously that's rearranged. I thought, you know what? I need to come on with you because I've always wanted to talk about this. And the word education, I thought, yeah, I need to bring Alan on because he's passionate about this, about bringing change to that.
Ah.
Yes. Hence why I said we're going to enjoy this discussion. So, where does it all start? And I'm going to start with you, Kane.
And what would you like me to start with?
Why, like the connection between mental health and the education? Because there's a lack of understanding in it.
Look, I think you know one of the greatest things that I see consistently is people just being labeled. And in mental health, you know, when you start labeling kids, and it's happening with my nephew that I see, you know, he's 17 years old, and he's had this drummed into him for the last few years that he has ADHD, and he blames all of his behavior. I have ADHD. That's why. And look, I've got a lot of energy as a human being. Always have. Not always, actually. It wasn't until I actually got the confidence within my own self that my energy levels really started to explode. Previous to that, 15. Previous, like coming up to 15 years of age, my energy levels were dull, where I wasn't living in my own skin. I was bullied a lot. I was a fat kid, large kid, whatever you want to call it. But I got bullied a lot, massively, psychologically and mentally. And there's no avenue back then. There was no avenue to, especially bullying. You know, bullying has only really come into our society in the workplace. It only really came into as a kind of a regulation only in the last few years, like bullying, harassment within the workplace. And, you know, in Queensland, I don't know about the other states, but in Queensland, if you were bullied in the workplace, you could actually, you couldn't sort it out with your employee or employer, or your managers. You could actually get a representative from the government to come in and mediate on the basis of the bullying to sort it out. That never used to be out. That was never there. And in schooling, it's such a, especially in Australia. So Australia's got a very, especially with boys, there's this teasing, blokey kind of language that goes on where it's not, you're not meaning it to be bullying, but when you keep repeating the same thing, it's kind of bullying, right? It starts playing on people's mindset, and you keep telling someone that you are something, and slowly that person becomes that thing. Like, to give you an example, like when the boys are together and they're like, "Oh, you're such a girl," or I used to get wog a lot, right? "Oh, you're such a wog." Well, yeah, I am. But when you're a kid, you kind of take it personally, and you would kind of shy away from anything woggish. You would keep away from your heritage because you didn't want to upset the apple cart. But they didn't mean it that way, right? They were just finding the humor in it, just getting a reaction, and they weren't deliberately going, "Oh, I'm gonna smash this kid's mindset and destroy his confidence." They're not thinking like that. No. They're just thinking, "Oh, just having a laugh. Oh yeah, having a giggle." Ah.
Exactly.
But we're not trained. We're not taught from a young age how dialogue has such a powerful aspect in our communication that affects people so in a long-term period. And I think more of that needs to come into the schooling system of what language, the power of language, and how, you know, there's English, yeah, and that's English, and yeah, we shouldn't say these things, but it's more the understanding of, well, why shouldn't you say these things? Well, you shouldn't say these things because words are an energetic power, and they affect the people around you. So when you give an example of being at a party and you see the life of the party, you know, everyone's got a friend in the group that's the life of the party, and they walk in and then everyone's like, "Oh, Bill's here. Oh, great. We all get to have a little bit of fun." And then all of a sudden, one of the assholes walks into the party. What assholes in the group? They're in a pissed off mood. The whole atmosphere changes. One person creates an effect in a whole room, and that's done on the energy of the emotion and the energy that they exude through their emotional state, and their words carry that. And when you're young and you deliberately pick on people, like my kids do it, right? And I got two young boys, 9 and 6, and they do, right? "Oh, dummy," and "Oh, you're such a poo-poo face," right? But it's the consistency of saying things like that that really starts working on the psychological development of these young kids. And I have to always step in because, again, this is schoolyard related, right? Schoolyard related, where they're picking up on these types of speech behaviors and no one's pulling them up on it. And unless you're a very aware parent and you're pulling them up on it, they just say it and they get away with it. So it's a really interesting area. It's there's so much more that can be done in the understanding of mental health in the education system and how we can actually talk about it and also move forward through it, not being the victim, but moving forward through the experience and understanding that the only way that you actually get to shine your own light is by accepting everything that's actually happened to you, no matter what area or what establishment that it's actually been created, whatever dramatic thing that has crushed your soul and nailed your intelligence and made you think that you're an idiot or a dummy or and I went through that, so but you're the only person that can actually choose to rise above that, learn from the experience, and start educating the people around you about the pluses and the negatives to it.
Yeah.
And unless you actually have that voice, anyone that's gone through that experience, any kind of experience, unless you actually utilize your own story, utilize your own voice, get it out into the universe, and actually have an effect on your immediate community, which is your family, your lovers, your partners, your children, and that then has the ripple effect that goes through the community as you stand up in the own power of what it is that you believe to be right and true, because you've experienced it. Now I get to tell my story and share that with other people and let people know it's not a good thing. We all have stories and we all have to accept our deficiencies. Not everyone's perfect. Not everyone's a academic. Not everyone's a creative. Not everyone is part of the elite. Everyone has their place in the world. Everyone's been given a drop of a dream of their essence. Right, there's 7 billion people in the world, and every single person in the world has their own perspective.
Yeah,
everyone can read the same book, and everyone will have a different perspective. No one thinks the same perspective in any circumstance. You'll get similarities, but everyone still thinks originally in their own existence, whatever path they've walked along. Anyway, I feel like I'm just talking. Alan, jump in, man.
Well, actually, I was waiting for Adam there, but a couple of things before we get into it. We're looking at what people need to do. We look at, as you said, there are no two people on the planet who are the same. Everybody is uniquely different to each other. There is no two personalities that are the same. It's like psychometric profiling is good if you're the profiler putting people in boxes, but really take the person out of the box and see them as an individual in their own right. Everybody, the similarities come down to that every one of us have suffered or is suffering. Every one of us wears a mask. Every one of us pretends we're not wearing a mask. And every one of us is the results of our childhood sufferings and rewards. So when we realise that no matter who we're talking to, everybody fits into those categories. That includes the children, it includes the parents, it also includes the teachers. And if we're talking about education, one thing I always like to point out, because quite often we start talking about the education system, and a lot of teachers will take offence to it. The thing is that the teachers are not the education system, and the education system is not the teachers. I don't know any teacher who became a teacher because of the long holidays and the high pay, because they do not have high pay. If you look at the number of hours they actually do work in their holidays, it's a small pay. But they are also the results of our education system. They're just as broken as our kids are. Yeah. The education systems let everyone down. If we look at our children, we have those that we put in special needs. I call them kids with gifts. At the same time, at the other end of the scale, we have the kids that are high achievers, have high IQs, that are the so-called gifted children. They're the other gifted children. So we have two gifted children or types
apparently
of children.
On the spectrum, Alan. Apparently on the spectrum. But everyone's on the spectrum.
Everyone is. Well, the spectrum is between here and here, and every one of us are on there. It's a sliding scale. It just depends on which way we tilt the bars, which way we slide. And it depends on what we're going through at the time. So they're the sort of things, first of all, I like to bring out and explain to people so that when we get into and we start looking at the system that's failing everybody, no one takes offence to it, because we're all in the same boat when it comes down to this.
Yeah.
We look at so many of the children who are labelled with conditions. Good percentage of those will drop out of school. The same thing happens to our high achievers. it's a high percentage of those, one of those high percentages in the double figures in the percentages that will drop out of school. The system fails them as well.
Yeah.
The system is designed in the middle to take the entrepreneurship out of all of our children, make them little brown boxes so they fit into a classification that we're trying to put them into a job. And so this is where our kids sit. Now, if they've got anything outside of that, they're not going to fit the system. And whenever they're outside the box, because we're teaching all the kids they've got to be the same, this is one of the reasons why a lot of the children will point fingers at other children. The main reason is it's not that we think there's something wrong with them. It's due to a lack of understanding of that person. It's through lack of understanding that we have fears. And that's when we start pointing fingers and giving kids a hard time. What we should be doing, I think, in the very early stages of school is not so much focusing on whether they can draw in between the lines and colour in the lines and whether they can recite their alphabet and everything else. We should be teaching them skills at that point about communication, about the words, the impact what they say has on somebody else. So we're teaching the children to become humanists, be humanly connected to each other, regardless of the difference. Because if you ask a young child about somebody, an adult they've seen, the last thing they actually mention is the colour. They don't even come up with it until they're prodded whether the person was black or white or any other shade. So this is a learnt behaviour as we're getting older. We can say that as parents, we need to do this with our children, but unless it's done across the board, which means at school, we're fighting a losing battle.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Alan, because for the last year and a bit, I don't like using the word fight, but that's exactly what we've been doing in trying to get our son, our 10-year-old genius, into this secondary school, because it's not he can't manage or cope with mainstream primary school, it's they can't cope with him because of how clever he is. Now, he was assessed a couple of weeks ago at the secondary school and he was denied a place because they can't meet his academic level, as they say. So now every single school in the Blackburn with Darwin area don't want him because they can't meet him. So this is exactly what we mean. But now we're actually taking action against the council, the education department, for child negligence, because he, just like everyone else, has a right to an education. And when he's been denied these places, what psychological impact is that going to have on him in the long term?
So there's a lot of things you got to look at there, because let's face it, the teachers aren't trained in this area. If you look at most teachers, well, in Australia, 40% of the teachers who finish their degree will never see the inside of a classroom other than when they were doing their practical training. Once they got the degree, they never go into the job. Of those that go into the job, you've got 40% of those won't last the first 5 years. While they're in that first 5 years, older, more mature teachers, senior teachers, have to mentor them on the way through. So now we're dragging those senior teachers away from their teaching as well. And we're putting extra burdens on them. We're giving them a curriculum they have to teach. And so they are subject to all of this. And so no wonder they can't teach any child that doesn't fit into the category. As I said, we're creating brown boxes. When we leave school, first of all, if we're not good at maths, what do? We get more maths homework, more tutoring, etc., working on something we're not good at. We then get told that we need to be, like everybody else, that we need to sit there and be quiet. So we take the entrepreneurship out of them. Then when they leave school, what are we looking for? We're looking for entrepreneurs. We're looking for them to be employed by their strengths. But we didn't work on their strengths at school. We worked on their weaknesses. I don't blame the teachers. We're subject to a system that was, 300 years old. It was designed to get us ready for the factories and to work down the mines. The education system used to be for the rich, not for the poor. But then to actually get everybody into that situation and work in those fields, we had to educate people into that. So we created brown boxes. And then when we get out of there, everyone's talking about, well, don't be a brown box, stand out. Be a pink box, be a blue box, a red box, a green box. But don't be a brown box anymore. So we spent 13 years at school educating us into the wrong role. And then we expect these kids to step out and have it all together.
Exactly. And like Lillian said, I'm actually going to put it up. Yeah. A son was asked to leave the childcare centre and kicked out at 15. Have you not noticed, especially with that comment, history keeps repeating itself every time? Because Albert Einstein, he was kicked out of school and labelled stupid and wouldn't amount to anything. And look what he actually achieved.
Yep.
See, because
This
they
is
didn't
the
fit
interesting
the box.
thing, right? I mean, kids need particular attention in depending on the child in whatever particular areas, but the gift is actually trying to discover what it is that they specialize in as that person, right? And identifying. So this child seems to be going this way. So what can we implement for that child to move forward in that direction to give them confidence? Because it's all confidence based. Yeah. If you look at everyone leaving school, there's this much percentage that actually has any confidence in that first 10 years of leaving high school, where the majority are falling over, tripping over, trying to guess, doing things that their parents told them that they should do. And by the time they turn 30, it's like, what am I doing here? I never wanted to do this. Wasn't me. This isn't who I am. I'm starting to question my whole existence. I've got 2 kids now. I've got to support them through school. Shit, I need money. Right? People are going through all these extraordinary circumstances because of the lack of confidence to choose what it was that was resonating inside their own soul, inside their own heart, of their dreams, of what their vision was. See, what I never saw at school, I mean, there's maybe even my kids' school now, I mean, there's not a structure of an individual vision process. What it is that you see in your life, where are you wanting to go? What is it that you want to teach yourself? I mean, as part of the tools that I help people with and dig deep down, because I deal with people that have basically confidence issues, right? Self-esteem issues, self-worth issues. And when you go down through that line of understanding of where it is they are and what it is that's actually their sufferance is, it all stems from when they're kids. There's all these interconnections when the kids, the parents, or through schooling or bullying, whatever it may be, but they've held on to that for decades. So did I, for decades. It's taken me, and I've been working on it constantly, and I still had discoveries. 2 years ago, massive breakthroughs in my own self-awareness, my own self-worth. And you're constantly evolving. But what we don't give these kids when they leave school is the confidence to make their own choice. Their own choice. Well, their choice that resonates with them. That the ADHD, the I'm on the spectrum, get rid of all of that, because the moment you shove that shit in people's faces,
it's a barrier.
Right? It's a complete barrier. And what happens? You create a boundary around yourself. Oh, I can't do this.
We give them those labels.
I have.
Go on, Alan. Go on, Alan.
Yeah. We give them these labels, and the reason for that is for the people who are measuring them. It's like psychometric profiling, putting somebody into a box so that we feel comfortable where they sit, because we've got the academics who need to know where the kids actually sit. They need to be able to classify them. They need to be able to give them a label so that they feel happier about it. What we need to be doing is removing those labels. The other thing too is that we're teaching the kids to do certain jobs. We're taking the entrepreneurship out of them, and that you said to get the kids to pick what that suits them. but we haven't given that opportunity anywhere through the education system. What we've actually got is we set them up for subjects. We're looking at what does the industry needs at the moment, and therefore we start training the kids. And as they say, most of the jobs that they're being trained for today won't exist when they leave school. Now, the whole thing is that we don't look at what would suit their personalities. We don't profile them in that way. We don't understand how each child is individually different and read them that way. Every time I've tried to talk to the education department about this here in New South Wales, I was originally told that, yes, the kids are the most valuable thing that we have. We spend so many millions of dollars on them each year, but we don't endorse third parties. Now, when I was talking to them about how to actually read the children, understand their personalities, because every kid does come with a manual. And yes, you can read a book by its cover. The face tells me everything I need to know about a child. I can look at their face and tell you their personalities. I can tell you what hobbies and sports will suit them before they get to school. And by the time they're at school, before they pick their final subjects, what careers will suit their personalities. Now, not telling them what careers they should go and do, but giving them a job guide and say, hey, it's a white telephone book if you start reading it. But if you go and have a look at these jobs, it's a yellow telephone book. It gives you an idea. Go and see what pushes your buttons, what excites you. Guiding them in a direction, but allowing them to make their decisions. Empowering them, as you said, but we don't do that. There's no empowerment anywhere through the education system. We tell them at school that they deserve everything, that they can do everything, get anything they want, but we don't teach them how to get what they need.
I agree.
And so the end result is we're like helicopter parenting, hovering over our children, protecting them of everything. We're robbing them the experiences they need to learn a little bit of resilience as they're growing up. They need to push our boundaries to test and everything else because, well, the child doesn't push you to break you. The child pushes you to see if you'll hold. And if you can hold, the end result is then you've got a strong bond with them. They have the boundaries and they have a direction in which to go. You haven't put barriers up, but you're giving them guidance. And you're guiding them to make their own decisions. Children, we're not supposed to be carpenters or sculptors when it comes to our kids. Our job's not to turn them into something. We're gardeners. Our job is to nurture them so they can find who they are.
Yep.
Our job is to protect them and look after them. And if we do that and we had an education system that actually was trained to be able to do that, and I don't blame the teachers because they've got to work on a curriculum. They've got all this pressure and everything else. They've got to get the kids achieving, but they're not connecting with the children. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the biggest problems that teachers have in New South Wales was lack of respect.
Yeah. What I picked up on is when my kids were in school, obviously they're being home educated at the minute, but when they were in school, they were learning about mental health, but the thing is, they were learning about labels and how they affect us. But the thing is, they need to learn about mindset, communication, even the law of attraction. They need to learn about those three key things in life, but they don't.
So when you come down to the law of attraction and everything else, you talk about the secret. Most people still forgot the one ingredient that was there but not really talked about, and that is you have to make yourself ready. Yeah. You can put it out to the universe, but the universe goes, what do you want? And if we say, well, just give me, and it's going, what do you want? We never get there. You got to make yourself ready for it. And how do you do that? And how do you do it for your kids? You got to guide them. You can't just say to them, hey, put up your vision boards and everything else will just happen. Unless you make yourself ready, you're not even part of the process. So the kids have to be part of their own future.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%, Alan. Everything that you've just expressed. Can I ask you, Alan, what is your understanding of Finland and their education system? And if you do have an understanding of it, what is your opinion of it?
Well, I know for a fact that they don't put in the hours of homework that the kids over here do. They go to school for a smaller number of hours each day, and they've got one of the highest levels of education in the world. So, but do we go and have a look at what they're doing? Now, we look at it and go, oh, that won't work here. It won't work unless you've tried it. Exactly. So you're absolutely right. If you say it won't work and you don't apply it, well, I'll give you an example. As I said, in 2012, I was my first time with the education department. The second time was in 2016, again at the State Premier's request to meet with the Minister for Education here. He fobbed it off with a paste, pretty much a cut and paste of the original letter he sent me in 2012, which was, kids are the most important thing. We spend so many millions of dollars on each year, but we don't endorse third parties. But in both cases, they gave me a consolation prize, and this time it was to meet with the head psychologist for New South Wales Education. And I met with her and her counterpart, and she agreed with everything I said was absolutely true. They were going backwards. But her comment was, and this one floored me, and this is why I realised I was wasting my time in the education system, and that was that they knew they were going backwards, but if they continued doing what they were doing, sooner or later, they expected a different result. Now, I think a gentleman by the name of Einstein had something to say about that one.
Yep.
But that came from the head psychologist for New South Wales Education, and I just went, I don't know how we're going to change the system.
No.
No,
So
it's
with parents ever since.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Alan, because I still remember even today that I actually approached my kid's old head teacher, and I said, yeah, we can't change, parents can't change the school curriculum, but one thing we can change, and that is the national curriculum. And going back to what you said earlier, Alan, she then went on the defence. She did not like that. Because I think that's what teachers hate, is to be challenged with, to come across people that know what they're talking about.
Yeah. But see, the thing is, remember too, that they feel that they've been put under the same brush. When we talk about education system, we're talking about teachers. And that's why I'm so adamant. I met with the Shadow Minister for Education quite a number of years ago, and he used to be a principal at one of the schools here in New South Wales, and one of the really tougher schools where the gangs were involved. And as I said to him, I sat down, I told him exactly what I mentioned earlier on. I've never met a teacher yet who went into teaching because of the long holidays and the high pay. And he said, funny enough, he said, Alan, I was just giving a talk the other night and I said exactly the same thing. And so I always kind of push that forward. And if a teacher starts to get offended by what I'm saying about the education, I go, hang on, you're not the education system. You're in the education system the same as our kids are. I'm not holding you responsible, and I'm not blaming you for that. It comes back to, I believe, teachers were passionate. They came into the role because they wanted to help the children. They wanted to create the next generation of different industries and leaders and everything else. But the system doesn't allow them to do that. And my attack is always against the system, not against the teachers.
Yes, so here's something really interesting, Alan. I had a bit of a discussion about this the other day, and see, every age group, every grade has different skills and requirements in their understanding of as children are growing. You know, there's different thought processes, different reactions, different responses, different chemicals in the body, different thought processes, different curiosity, and every grade has a particular skill. In like a teacher in a grade needs a particular skill to really understand the communication of what this particular person psychologically needs at this level.
Yeah.
What I've noticed in the school that my kids are at, the teachers keep getting moved around. Grade 4, prep, grade 5, back to grade 2, grade 3. And there's no consistency. And the only way that you can become a specialist in understanding a particular set is consistency of constantly being able to be with the same group, understanding the mindset, reevaluate, learn, make better decisions, know what actually works for that particular group. When you keep moving people around, again, it's putting them in boxes, right? Okay, so I'm just going to treat all the kids the same, even though I'm in grade 5 this year, and I've just come from grade prep, where I've been focusing on new skills of how to integrate them into a schooling system. And then grade 5s who are starting to get into the chemical adolescent stage, and I have to understand the way they listen, the way they communicate, the way they absorb information. I don't like that people are getting moved around.
It's those trust issues, isn't it?
It does bring trust issues.
Yeah.
My kids, one of my oldest son was at one school, and that prep teacher has been a prep teacher for like apparently 15 years, right? And everyone raved about this prep teacher, right? Because she was a specialist. That's what she did. She was in prep. That was her thing. And when kids left prep, they left with a sense of love, achievement, and confidence. That's the biggest difference that I saw, because that person that was in there knew her job back to front.
Yes.
And how to communicate with that mentality of psychology for that group of people.
So the impact that has on the child, well, think about it. A child whose father leaves, the parents break up, the father moves out, the children feel like they've been abandoned. The boys in particular, it also affects the girls, but mostly the boys, they feel like they're abandoned. Well, it's no different if the teacher is all of a sudden changed. They feel abandoned by that teacher, especially if they're starting to connect. And so we're creating emotional problems in these kids and expecting to call it efficiency. Well, it's not. That's why we move people around and that to be more efficient and everything else. No, we're not. We're making things worse for them. The children need consistency, especially in the younger years. Now, we look at a child, we say, right, in the first 7 years, most of the imprinting is done. Well, actually, most of the imprinting is done in the first 2 months.
Yeah.
If the child is not picked up and nurtured and everything else, then as they start to getting problems later on, it hits them harder. But the children who have been picked up and nurtured, there's more resilience to things that happen later on. And as you said before, we carry that into our adult lives. I'm about to turn 70 and I can still look back and see when my buttons get pushed every now and then, I can look right back. As long as my vision's failing, but yes, I can look back that many years and I can see, where this stuff comes from. But we're not trained on how to deal with it. We go to counselling. If you go to counselling, you get told the wrong way of dealing with things. It's all about how do I get better quickly? Well, I just want to know, how do I get better?
Yeah.
End of story. How do I work through these issues? And if I look back, I can tell you a couple of teachers that I really enjoyed. And the problem is I can also remember what I felt like when I no longer had those teachers. When I got shifted in a class, if they didn't get shifted, I got shifted. And I know the impact that had on me. I hated school. I got bullied all the way through it as well. Whereas you were a larger size, as you said, Kane, I was small and I was a real nerd. And so therefore, I was a target. Yeah. And so I remembered that. So I really relied on the connection I had with the school teachers, and the good ones always seemed to disappear.
I've got a couple of questions for you both, and it actually brings up from constant, whatever you said, that constancy. Tests and exams. First one is, do you think tests and exams are one of the problems in causing mental health? And second is, do we actually need them?
Some people, again, it comes back to personalities.
Yes.
Someone who's got a sequential learning style, they need to understand each point before they go to the next point. Then they need to understand that point, connect it to the first one before they go to the third. They virtually are studying all the way through. If you had, assessments or little checks on how you're doing, have you learnt along the way, that would take the pressure off. But we're putting all the pressure at the end of the year for those that have a low self-esteem or their confidence levels aren't high, even if they're a sequential learner, because a sequential learner, by the time they get to the final end of the year, they know their stuff because they've been studying all year, because that's how they learnt. The objective thinker bounces all over the place, and in doing that, they usually cram at the end of the year. Now, for those that have a trait where they build their confidence, they're going to struggle with it because they're going to second guess. Like somebody who builds their confidence, you give them something new to do, they will go away, they will agonize over it, they will test it, they'll practice it. And if they start talking confidently, they know their stuff.
Yeah.
Someone who's got an innate self-confidence, well, they pick it up and they think they've got it, and away they go. But at the end of the year, if they haven't got it and they fail their exams, that's a major kick in the guts to their confidence levels as well. Now we have somebody who's got an innate self-confidence who's now got confidence issues.
Exactly.
I think an ongoing assessment and reporting back on how well they're doing, which is not just in their academic, like the results they get each time they do a test, but their interaction, their problem-solving skills and everything else. Because at school, we teach subjects, but when you go out into the world, you're expected to problem solve.
Exactly.
If all of our learning was problem-based learning, then you wouldn't need to teach subjects because we are able to find the answer to everything.
Yeah, they're slowly sucking that creativeness out of the kids. That's what they're doing. And they're doing it really clever, may I say. Really clever.
You have to get the kids ready for particular jobs.
Exactly.
So it had to be done that way. But it's not working today.
Nope.
Not only we're training them for, those jobs no longer exist. It was fine in past years when you trained for a particular job and it was going to be there for 20 or 30 years. When I left school, I was told by one of the neighbours, because my dad died when I was 3, so he was one of the people I listened to, and he said, get a job with the government and you'll work with them all your life, and then you'll get your superannuation at the age of 65 and you can retire. Well, that was because... And by the way, if we look at generations, think about Maslow's hierarchy and needs. I've seen these young Gen X, Gen Ys out there talking about the different generations and charging heaps for their interviews. But the end result is that if you understand Maslow's hierarchy and needs, you understand the generations. My parents, the builders, went through 2 wars, 2 depressions. It was of survival. That's the base level of Maslow. The next level was all about security. So we got told as kids we had to have security. Hence, I was told to go and get that job. Then when we've got the security, the next generation came along and went, well, we want to be recognised now. What about us? So they wanted the titles. This is your Gen X. They were career-driven. Then we had the next generation, Gen Ys. It's going, well, what about us? It's a family. Where's the family? Because especially in England, what do you call them over there? Latch kids. Because when the kid came home from school, if you opened the latch to go inside the house, parents weren't there. And they were going, well, where's our family? So each generation produces the next generation. So, by the way, if anybody out there is complaining about a younger generation, guess who's responsible? Look in the mirror. Because we did it. And by the way, we don't get depressed about it all because you can't be held responsible for doing something you didn't know the answer to when you started. But now we do know it. This is when we start to change the way that we're doing things, which means changing the way we've got our education system working.
Yeah, I want to bring up this comment, and obviously it's from our good friend Jade. She put, great discussion, guys. At the end of the day, everyone has a boss. It's not up to the teachers what they teach the kids. They have a boss. The boss has a boss. What experience that top boss actually has in teaching or dealing with children is debatable. All kids deserve an education, and I think it's time we start nurturing the subjects each individual child thrives at rather than pushing things on them that they maybe have no interest in or just don't understand.
Exactly. See, this is where if you brought it back to problem-based learning, you brought it back to experiential learning.
Yeah.
And the kids would, you would soon work out what subjects that they're drawn towards. Yeah. And you wouldn't need to worry about, because I know there was a principal, a director of schools in the Catholic education system in Parramatta, who realised that this new way of learning, problem-based learning, which is about 10 years ago, and I laugh when I heard it because they've been using that since 1949 in the medical system, problem-based learning now. But they also looked at having the large auditorium, having the teachers all set out, and all the kids would then go to the teachers that they felt most comfortable with, doing the subjects that they felt most comfortable with. Yeah. And in that class, there were kids of all ages. Now, you've got to be careful because that does cause another problem. Yeah. Because now you've got the older kids with younger kids there, and if their self-esteem is not high enough, they then start to feel that, hey, I'm dumb because I'm older, but I'm in the same class as this younger kid. Yeah. But if we taught how to connect, how to problem-based learn, and actually set those older kids up as a guides for the younger ones, and they worked as teams, we'd break all those barriers down.
Yeah,
there's a lot of ways of doing this, and that statement is absolutely true. There are so many different levels involved, and we can't blame any one level. Yeah. It's a matter of going, okay, this is we need to make these overall changes, and then we go, what can I do as an individual? Yeah, what can I do as a parent? What can I do as a teacher?
See, that's why we're struggling with this homeschooling, because our son, he's got that mindset where for him to get a job when he's older, the only thing he needs is maths. And that's his speciality, that's his talent. And we're supporting him with that. It's like, well, do you actually just need maths, or do you need more?
So does he need maths and the other subjects? It all depends on, well, what's it you're going to use the maths for? What areas are you likely to go into?
Oh, he's learning everything.
He's
learning every type of maths, even maths methods, even I've never heard of.
Yeah, well, the whole thing is understanding, well, where could they all be used? What sort of careers? Talking about those particular careers, does that actually interest him? Then when you've got that, you go, okay, in that career, what other little things do you need? You're going to need to be able to read to a certain level, but you have to have, be the grammar police and be perfect in all your prepositions and nouns and verbs. And I just rattled off a couple of words here, and I don't even know how they really fit into it. I threw that away when I left school. People talk about nouns and pronouns, and I go, "Where's Google?" I'll have to look that up.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because, and this is for everyone, we always got taught that from teachers, or when you leave school, you don't need a calculator. Well, hang on a minute, they're on our phones.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All these things are there. The other thing is, if we've got problem-based learning and we've learned how to look at a problem and then go and analyze it. The whole thing is then, well, where do we get the information for that?
Yeah.
See, to have all that stuff in our head, it's impossible. We have to know exactly what career we're going to go into. We need to know exactly what problems we're going to have in that career. To study that at school, that's impossible because we don't know what we're going to be doing after school because there's so many changes. Quite often we're told, you should do this job because you make a lot of money. Well, guess what? You go into that career and it doesn't suit your personality. You'll need to make a lot of money to pay for your medical bills because you're going to be on depressants and everything else. It's a case of...
James loving this.
I've got 3 sons.
This is so true.
My sister has 3 sons. My oldest boy and her son are 15 days apart. He said to me one day that I should be more proud of his cousin than I am of him. And I said, why? He said, he's got his own business. He's doing really well in this area. And I go, hang on. I said, I know what his attitudes are to some people. You don't have those attitudes.
No.
I'm proud of that. And I said, and besides, I don't care what job you're doing, as long as you're happy at it and you're doing your best job at it. If that's sweeping streets, I just expect your street to be the cleanest one out in the neighbourhood, because it's who you are and what you actually do with other people. As they say, what you do for yourself dies with you, but what you do for others and for the community isn't always will be eternal.
Yeah.
The people who are human, who look after other people, help and guide them, they've got more value to me. And so I've got 3 sons, and I readily say openly that I love and respect because they've all got those hearts. And they've all had problems at school. My number 2 son, I thought would never get through year 12. He did. He left school. He's now he's been learning languages left, right, and centre. He had to learn Finnish and Swedish when he went and lived in Finland. That's when he met his partner. He met her in England. He came back to Australia and did Chinese. He then got bored on the weekends and went to the local mosque, and they were teaching him Arabic and Farsi. And now at the moment, his son's now 17 years old. That's my oldest grandson. He's now doing Spanish and French.
Exactly. Yeah, this is what I don't get, because when my son was being assessed at the secondary school, he was literally counted to 100 in English, French, and Chinese. I'm like, how the hell did you do that? Went YouTube.
Oh. So,
YouTube.
well, I know that my oldest grandson, when he was only a youngster, he had already, he was born in Finland. His other grandparents, one's Finnish and one's Swedish, so he had to learn both languages. He grew up with those languages. He had English. And so when he came to Australia, I remembered one of the teachers saying, he knows too many languages, because while his father was learning Chinese, he was looking over his shoulder and learning that as well. And the school teacher said, he's learning too many languages. It's like, it's mind-boggling.
Well, I don't know about you, Kane, but this is what they teach. One day, our kids came home and they said that they learned, not on the same day, but 1 minute they're learning English, then they're learning Spanish, then French. I'm like, and then it goes off what Alan said, you learn too many languages. Huh? That's contradiction right there.
Yeah. See, this is the thing. If a child is happy at what they're learning, they're going to be more productive with it.
Yeah.
If they're happy at what they're learning, their mental health is going to be better. If their mental health is better, those that feel insecure because of other children around them won't go and bully other kids, because if they're happy, they're too busy being happy.
Yeah.
And they're more open and understanding of other people. The priority, I believe, is to work on the mental health issues, work on communication where they can get to know each other and understand each other. See, I was talking to a group of school kids. I gave a talk in the town hall and all the kids were around me, and I said to a group of them, who are the kids you get on with? Obviously, all the kids that were around are boys and girls. And I said, rightio, who don't you get on with? And a couple of boys pointed to a group on the other side of the room who was talking to one of the other presenters. And I went, why don't you like them? They don't like the stuff that we're doing. I said, do they like the girls that, I was talking to the boys. I said, do they like the girls that you guys like? Because they were about 16, 17. And they went, no. I said, well, guess what? Your mates who are right here with you, why are they mates? They like the same stuff that we like. I went, fair enough. They like the same girls. Yeah, they do. I said, well, guess what? When you leave school, these are the kids who are going to be your competition. These are the ones going to be chasing the same jobs that you're after and the same girls that you're after. Those kids over there that you don't like, they're the ones who aren't going after the same jobs that you go after. They're not going after the same girls. And if they happen to be working in the same organisation, they're going to love doing the jobs that you don't like doing and vice versa. So you can push the stuff across the table to them that you don't like, and they're going to say thank you and draw it to them. I said, teams are made up of people who are different. You may not go on holidays with them on the weekend, but you're going to be so glad that they're there to take on those duties you don't like doing and to complement the work that you're doing. And they started looking at the kids on the other side of the room, and I went, it's up to you guys. You're going to keep disliking those other kids, or you're going to go and look where the gifts that they bring to the table.
What do you think, Kane?
Look, I totally agree. I'm a big. I've been involved in team building, corporate team building for quite some time, and understanding workplace personalities, and it really does come down to one integral aspect, and this goes right across the board of human beings.
Mm.
And without this one particular key aspect, there's always confrontation of some sort because there's a lack of understanding. And that key aspect is acceptance.
Yes.
Because within acceptance, you get to appreciate the differences that people have, their different skill sets, and you try to take away the ego associated to, maybe they're getting too much limelight or whatever, right? But the acceptance is going, you're really good at this. And this is what a good leader does, right? a good leader, and this is where teachers are leaders, and a good leader, a good teacher is able to go, this child has this skill set. This is what they should be focusing on for this year. And they should be able to identify that in the classroom. And it should, because again, the classroom is, at the end of the day, it's a big team.
Yeah.
And if you allow, we've got to try and make it even, and everyone's got to have their little go, and you've got to share everything, and everyone has to see where they're at. Well, I'll guarantee that if I spend 1 month in a classroom with a group of kids, I'll know every one of their strengths, that I'd be able to go, this person is good at this person's good at this person's good at this. Let them focus on what they're good at, build their confidence for the year. So when they go into the next year, they finish with the accreditation in their own mindset of going, I did this all year and I'm freaking good at it.
Yeah.
The interesting aspect to, like, I just want to use this personal example, right? And this is where I see the failing in the schooling system is that they don't have the balls enough to communicate with other schools. And when I say that, I see my partners. So my partner's gone through a separation, a divorce, over the almost 2.5 years or something. And her 2 older boys, they've really struggled, right? The 2 younger kids are really thriving. So there's 4 kids. She's got 4 kids. But the oldest one, he's really struggling. You know, he's in a school that isn't highlighting his skill set. His skill set is creativity. His skill set is dancing. Okay. And that school that he's in is cutting the dancing out of the curriculum, right? Which is the one last thing that that drives him, that he's actually has some sort of light about within. Even though he's struggling with the divorce, he's struggling with the separation, there's parental alienation going on, and he's struggling with that. You know, it's one parent's fighting against the other one wants peace, the other wants war. It's a shit circumstance to be in. And that really affects the children. And the only person that actually gets hurt in that whole experience is the freaking kids, right? But
that's right.
The schooling system should be aware enough of being able to highlight this person is a creative. Our school doesn't support this person. He needs to go somewhere else. Let us be proactive and start talking to other schools to see what curriculums that would really suit his type of personality. Now that's constructive. That's actually going outside of the box and creating a service. Just like hospitality, it's a service. School is a service at the end of the day. Yeah, it's education, but it's a service. You're not going there to become a doctor. You're getting a service to become a little bit more of a balanced human being in what it is that you need to move forward with. And if we're more intelligent in our efficiency of creating a confidence and self-esteem for that individual to be able to make their individual choices. So when they are 15, they go, you know what? I don't like this school and I don't really like the things that are being taught here. I really like this and I'd like to do this. But kids are so scared to make those decisions, to make those choices in their own selves. They just go, they shut their mouth. They don't really know what to say. They start going inward. They don't talk about things. They get angry. They get involved in drugs. They start drinking. They have sex, and then they get angry, and then they just have a shit experience. And then they leave school, and they're like, I don't fucking know what I'm doing. Sorry, am I allowed to swear? I swore anyway. People out.
It comes back to our responsibilities as well, because for the kids to withdraw and everything else, they're not connected.
That's right.
with so many kids, well, they're talking about, half the families and they're being broken now. The fathers are emotionally or physically absent. When you've got two parents who are fighting with each other, ravaging each other, the ones who suffer are the kids, because they're telling each of the children, they don't realise it, but subconsciously they're telling the child that half of them is no good. So while the mother bags the husband, they're telling their sons that, hey, that half of you is no good. It's even impacting on their daughters as well. And if the father is bagging the mother, they're doing the same thing as well, because the kids know they've come from both parents. And so when parents bag their children, if they don't realise this, well, once I tell them, once you understand that every word you say when you bag your partner is impacting on your child, then that becomes, once you're aware of it, that then should be classed as child abuse. Once you realise it.
Alan, see, this is an integral part of our life system in our communities, right? This is one thing that I saw right across the board that I just see such a failing in. The biggest thing that I see, so I've been through a divorce, right? But I've got an amazing co-parenting. And the only reason is because both parents, myself and my ex-wife, both of us took our responsibility of our own shit that we had to deal with, but accepted that you are the mother of these children, I am the father of these children, and we're stuck together for the rest of our lives, whether we like it or not.
So
the only way that we're going to give our children a choice to be able to have a positive outcome is by leading by example, that we can communicate and create a safe boundary for these children to be able to move forward. Now, the biggest thing, Alan, that I see in a deficiency in Australia, we're the most governed country in the world. Why don't we have a system in place when you go through a separation or a divorce before any financials are done? Because once you start splitting the estate, that's when the arguments start, the dirty stuff, that I'm going to tear them apart, and the lawyers make it worse, right?
Yeah,
what they don't understand is the psychology of the children. And in some states in America, if you go through a separation, you have to do a weekend course in separation psychology to understand what it takes to behave a particular way so it doesn't affect the children as badly as what it could, right? And I've had discussions with people over there with that in place. What it needs is 2 weekends. It's still not enough, but it's at least something where you get 2 weekends. If you go through a separation and divorce, before you can do financials, you have to get a document from the government saying, I've just spent 2 weekends understanding child psychology in divorce and separation, and why it's so important for my behavior to be in an integral part of this existence before I get into the financials. And you could legally put that. I want this in Australia. This is one of my calling cards, right?
See, at the end of the day,
right?
Yeah. Let me just say on that,
Alan, go on.
Right? Yeah. Because it's so easy. Because all the government needs to do is go, okay, lawyers, before anyone is allowed to disintegrate the estate in a divorce, this couple needs to get a document. This document, 2 weeks of education on the psychology of divorce and separation, and understand. Sign it off.
How many documents do we have that are totally worthless? And I can see that one being totally worthless as well, because a lot of people will go there just to get the documents so they can get their financials sorted out. It comes back to realising that if you don't look after your children, then your children are going to suffer. If you bag your partner, you're going to affect your children. If you love your children, end of story. My first wife left and I had the 3 boys to raise on my own. The first thing I sorted out was our property settlement to get that out of the way. After that, I realised that as the boys were growing up, they weren't really connected to their mother. And I realized that if they didn't respect their mother, they would have broken relationships themselves, just like I had had. So I had the awareness, and it worked because it wasn't because of a government involvement. The last thing we need involved in families, and that is government. All the regulations we have is nothing but problems. We need to educate people to do this themselves, not regulate them.
But Alan, people, if you go, hey, buddy, I know your wife just, did the dirty on you or whatever, but you should really understand the psychology of what you're going through. People don't do that on their own turf, right? They don't go, oh, I should become a better person to make sure my kids are better. When they're in pain, when a lot of people are in pain, all they want to do is hurt someone else.
Exactly.
Right?
So
that's the sad part.
We were talking about the children at school. We started right back at that early stage.
Yeah.
We started in the understanding so that when we get through to that stage, we've already got this stuff in place. It's part of the ongoing education of our children.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, I think.
But the adults.
Ken, I think we need to come back for a part 2 here because clearly I love both of your passion. I really do. We could be sitting here for like another 3 hours with this because you two are just bouncing off each other. But
just remember that the most important thing is the children. If we are loving parents and really care about them, and that is something that's pointed out to us all the way through, then we learn to change the way we're doing things. We need to do it from inside, not from outside.
Yes,
absolutely, 100%.
And outside will never work. Regulations and everything else will never work. In some cases, to get your life in order and to look after the family, properties need to be settled first. It comes down to the individual situations.
Yeah, well, I'm going to end this because otherwise you two are going to be at it.
Kane and I will swap details later on and we'll connect and have a further chat.
Absolutely, yeah. Right, bit of housekeeping. Please tune in tomorrow for International Women's Day. No, I'm not going to dress up as a woman, not at them. 8 p.m. UK time when I'm going to be the guest on Dale's show, talk about medication. And the future of the mental health warriors. We're going to talk about that as well. Thank you all. You've both literally drained the shit out of me. Thanks for that. I hope you both
mistake of getting 2 people who are passionate about the subject of children and education. What did you expect?
Exactly.
Well, the thing is, you two have never met. Right? You two have never spoken as well before today. So I think we should come back at some point. I'll schedule you both in to about understanding children's mindset through separation. How's that? Let's do it. Right. We'll schedule that. Right. I love you all. Please share the shit out of this. And yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.